Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paranormal Connections radio show. Now, if I didn't tell you before how absolutely crazy it is lately in my building and just with the show in general. Of course, before I'm getting ready to do the show, get down to the office and Comcast is absolutely down. I have no internet. And I have no idea usually how to run it from the phone. So this is going to be a trial and error night, I am sure. Um, I'm not sure if I'll be able to put the comments up, but I will read them and you guys can just kind of let me see how it goes. Let's see. Well, I'm back. I don't know how much, if anything, anybody caught, but let me see. We're just going to do this really quickly and we are just going to bring, we're going to go ahead and bring my guest on because I have no idea how much of that you guys heard because, of course, in my little haunted office, it's always going to add some fascination to what's going to happen during the show. All right. Hey, beautiful.
How are you?
Oh, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Okay, you know what? It's weird because now I have like a really weird like feedback in the background.
From my end.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna log you out and then or log out and log back in because there was you had two screens up, so maybe that caused something, but I'm
Hold
not
on,
really
let me
sure.
try something.
Okay.
How's that?
No, still the same.
Still the same. Okay, I'll log out. I'll be
All
right
right,
back.
guys. Hold tight, row. We figured this out. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. All right, let's see. All right. We'll wait for her to get back on and then we will start the show. So again, yeah, you gotta love when you have all the craziness going on. All right, she should be here. Hey Stanley, nice to see you. Oh, I can. Oh, okay, I can do it from here. See, I'm learning. I'm learning. All right, looks like our guest is bad. Let's try it again. All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, let me hear a little bit low. Let me see. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, your volume is really low.
Hello?
And
Can
the
you hear
crazy thing is, guys, is that we actually were talking and everything was just fine before I started the show. So go figure.
How's that?
Still can't hear you real good, but for people in the chat, can you go ahead and message or actually comment below and let me know if you guys can hear her okay? Because on my side, it's really low. I mean, I can hear you, but it's just low. Anybody, Stanley? Anybody? Can you guys hear her okay? Did go ahead and say something so they can hear you?
Hey everyone, can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Hold on just a second. Hey Andrew?
okay. Hey Dee, thank you so much. Yeah, Carolyn, I think she's gonna go check. Hey Michael, nice to see you.
Christina, I'm going to sign out and sign back in.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'm back. Again, gotta love how it's going. Hey, so while we're waiting for her to come back on, I just want to say a few things. So, you know how on the show I've been talking about recently the precog dreams. I was talking about looking at hurricanes, things that were coming that were going to be much bigger. I saw an earthquake in the Mexico, LA area. Both hit in that area. I said it was going to be, we were going to be seeing weather that was unprecedented. And I stick with that. We are going to continue. I think that it is all I can describe it as it's scenarios right out of the movies. So if we're talking about movies about earthquakes and we're already seeing the wildfires and I'm going to be talking about that as well on the other show coming up. But yeah, if you're in the areas um, where they're forecasting these hurricanes to hit, I think that they're going to be coming back to back. Like it's not just going to be like people keep saying, "Oh, it's normal, it's hurricane season," until they start getting hurricanes that they're not expecting or prepared for. And we've seen it happen in the past, but I've being shown that they're going to even be bigger. So, please be safe if that's the case. Being in California. Hey, Raul, nice to see you. Thanks so much. Can you tell me where this weird rash came from? Well, what kind of rash is it and where is it? Don't. Let's see what we can do about that. Nurse Christina to the rescue. All right, we're just waiting for the guests to get back. Other things. So again, everybody knows I'm in California. I need for people in California to also be prepared. I think this year the wildfires as well as earthquakes. We're going to see, in fact, earthquakes from Alaska all the way to Mexico. We're going to be seeing a lot of it. Um, How are paranormal investigations in the house? Well, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much. Oh, thought you were doing readings. No, Dawn, not doing readings. I'm doing an interview, but thank you so much. All right, looks like our guest is back.
Hi,
Hello?
Christine. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, much better, much, much better. Oh, you gotta love it, I'm telling you. And this kind of stuff happens every show. I've had the weirdest luck on this show lately since actually since I started it. But we had all these guests. I had guests booked for like 4 or 5 months, and a lot of them were people that I knew personally who had been on the show before, and they were just so excited, that I was back on that they had stuff they wanted to promote or talk about. So I had everybody booked. So it wasn't like fly by night people that you would expect to cancel last minute. And it was like every other guest, like 45 minutes before the show was about to start, all of a sudden they'd call and there was some kind of like personal emergency that popped up, and they were valid. I mean, I'm not even putting them down. It was like, oh, the
Yeah.
mom was in the hospital, then they were in the hospital, their car broke down, and they had no internet. It was always something. So it's nothing ever surprises me on this show. Somebody was messaging me while I was waiting for you to come back on, talking about how Chad is, doesn't isn't here on the show a whole lot. But again, I just kind of roll with the punches because this is always how the show is. There's always craziness that happens, and so
Yeah.
worst case scenario, I've been doing the show solo for a long time, so I can figure it out. I mean, we had to meet a little early to make sure that this was going to work, but hey, we figured it out.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I have the same issues. It's just crazy.
Well, again, I was saying I don't know if everybody was able to hear me when I was doing the intro because it looked like it shut off and came back on. But I was saying that, it was very interesting because you had reached out to me to be a guest on your shows. And immediately we started kind of just chatting about our stories. And it has been a long time since I've met somebody who we had so much, our stories are so much in common, although they're very different. It's very weird. It's a very weird, connection, but it was immediate. And I was like, oh, I got to bring you on the show. This is going to be amazing. So let's start from the beginning because, I came from a very strict Catholic background. I'm Italian. We went to church all the time. My grandmother would have, in fact, two of my grandmas had the priest or the Monsignor would come to our house for dinner on Sunday after church. So like we were really, really in there. You, on the other hand, had a completely different experience with growing up, and I love that because I don't think we hear enough stories about people with abilities and experiences that grow up in a family where that's pretty normal and they don't get that whole not being believed issue. So how explain how it was for you.
Well, my mom was Catholic. Obvious, very,
Oh,
very
okay.
Catholic. Hi, Jennifer. She was really Catholic. But I think her spirituality and the changes in her belief system, I think started when she was a young woman, when she was pregnant with me, driving between Potsdam and St. Clair, New York, which is way upstate. It's on the border of Canada, near this on the St. Lawrence River.
Oh
And
wow.
she had an experience. She saw an unidentified flying object when she was pregnant with me with another car directly behind her. And they both pulled over, got out of the car, and didn't even speak to each other, she said, looked at each other, got back into the car, and drove off.
Wow. I mean, what would you say? Well, I mean, I guess you could try to ask what was that, but I mean, you're probably both in the exact same thinking the exact same thing, and neither one of you have any clue of what you just
Yeah.
experienced. So, and in that time, that's probably something that you would not really
Yeah.
speak about openly to people, other than maybe people close to you.
Well, and you know, she was her grandmother also had abilities with mediumship, and her grandfather read tea leaves.
Okay.
So I have that kind of on both sides of my family. I have mediums on my dad's side and mediums on the other side as well. But they were very Catholic on my mom's side, French Catholic, very Catholic. So I think because she was aware of it, but after seeing what she saw, it kind of changed her a little bit to seek out other stuff, like
Yeah.
what's going on. So
Yeah. I mean, I could see that because I mean, even myself growing up and having abilities in the Catholic Church, we're taught that like if there's any problem that you don't know how to solve, like you just go to the priest and the priest will have he's the know-it-all. He knows everything, how to fix everything. And I used to ask him like why I, saw things and why, I was seeing the spirits and they would just poo-poo it and say, oh, there's no such thing as, spirits, ghosts and spirits. And I'd say, oh, well, then why, when we pray, to say in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Holy Spirit? And they used to get so mad at me because
oh
I
yeah.
questioned everything. But as my experiences, seeing UFOs, having just very, what I felt was normal experiences, but nobody else around me had any of those experiences. So it does, I think that it really probably any religion that you're in, if that religion does not believe in this kind of stuff, right? When you have these experiences or you see the things you have or you have the abilities you have, it's really kind of a journey that you have to really a self-discoverance, journey that you kind of have to take and try to figure out. Was it hard for you or was it like easy? I mean, I guess maybe it would be easier for you. I mean, you can tell me because at least if you went and said, "Hey, I'm seeing this or I'm seeing that," now your mom's going to believe you. My family never believed me. They thought I was going crazy.
Yeah. Um, it was easy that I had someone to talk to and believe what I had seen, so I didn't feel so odd. I didn't even know it was an odd thing to do until I was in school.
Right. Right.
Um, I didn't realize it was anything different than anyone else as a child because of my mom. Um, and I think for some reason I developed it a little bit as a kid because I was so dyslexic that it was a coping mechanism. I needed to always know what people were thinking around me, what was going on. And I think my mom kind of knew that and was always there to support if I had a question. And she would see things too. She had often asked me, "Do you see that?" And I would describe it to her. And she'd be like, "That's what I see." So, very supportive of me when it came to that stuff, very supportive. And
Well,
very into meditation as a child.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, if you're going to have a child that has abilities, I feel like being able as a parent to be able to help that child kind of find their way through because meditation is so important. It's even as an adult, I found it's even more important than when I was a child
Highly
to be
recommend
able to find that peace.
it.
Hey, Jackie, thanks for joining. Hey, Michelle, I also saw you. I just didn't want to interrupt. So welcome. Thanks for joining, guys. Um, so your mom, so she just had this one UFO sighting, is that correct? Or did she have multiple over time?
It actually continued. It's really weird. It actually continued, and I think it continued a little bit with me growing up. Um, I can remember very far back seeing and hearing things, but I think it all started when I was probably about 4 or 5. We lived in a second story apartment building. I've told this story before. It just really, it still fascinates me. Well, one of my goals this year is actually to find somebody to put me under hypnotic state so I can like recall this. But it was a second story window.
I got someone for you. Don't mean to interrupt, but
Oh,
I definitely have somebody for you.
but
To,
oh, I would love that. By the way, I was supposed to be taking a nap, which I never did. I was a bad napper, hyper child, always into stuff, of course. And I looked in the window, and there were these two puppet-like things explaining weather patterns to me. And they were showing me cloud formation, weather, storms, and explaining it to me like you would a child. And then it started as I got older more and more. And then we lived in Wadsworth when I was in kindergarten, and that was Wadsworth, Ohio, oddly enough. We lived on 2 acres, and I love that home. I just love the energy in that house. But we would have experiences, and one night the whole house just lit up. And we were afraid. It was my mom, my little brother, and myself. And I can remember her hiding us under the windowsills. So, and this was in the 70s. So I can remember that like it was yesterday and still have flashbacks about that. And it didn't last more than 20 minutes and it was all over. And yes, there were actual helicopters that showed up later. So
wow.
it was interesting, you know, as it progressed, as I got older, it got different.
All right. And now, do you have memories of either or being contacted or abducted?
There was a few, I think in my 20s I was, and that stuff didn't start till I was 16. And
Okay.
that stuff happened in New York State in a small town called St. Clair, where my grandparents were. It is a very mountainous area. And I was 16. I remember it because I got in trouble that night for wearing too much makeup. It was the 80s, you know. And I was in the middle of nowhere, but I had a crush on a Navajo boy down the road.
Oh,
And
there you go.
I had to
Just in
whip off
case.
the makeup. And I wasn't asleep. I had just taken it all off, and my mom was in bed. She was reading, and we had to share a bed because it was my grandparents' place. And I crawled into bed, and it was no more than like 2 minutes later, and I could not move a muscle. And I thought, this is weird. This is a new experience. I looked over in the corner of the room, and there was a small being. And in my 16-year-old mind, the first thing that came to mind, because it had no hair, was Salem's Lot. And that sounds really weird, but I don't know if you remember that movie when it came out
Yes.
many moons ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was short and bald, and I was scared out of my mind. So I kept praying and talking to myself. Finally, I broke of that. My mom said it looked like I flew over her screaming at the top of my lungs. And then some of the experiences after that started.
You
And
know, it's
they
interesting.
weren't pleasant for a while. I didn't have that spiritual experience or story that I would love to have, although I had a
Right.
few of those. I did have a few of those. But they actually frightened me.
Well, yeah, I would think so. I mean, again, it's human nature for us to fear what we don't understand.
Sure.
And, you know, rather it's abduction or rather it's been something that you've been experienced for a long time or you were chosen. And that's kind of where like my feeling like when I'm kind of reading you is this is more of you were a chosen person more so than being abducted. That this may have started like way when you're like you said when your mom was pregnant with you and they just kind of followed you throughout time. And I agree. I think regression would be great for you. When I started my group, we had two different divisions, and one of my teammates that we put on the UFO division was actually a hypnotherapist. and she actually, this is what she specializes in, and has been very, very successful. And I watched Close Encounters of the fourth kind, and everything, and scared the hell out of me when it was coming to
Yeah,
regression. Because if, you know, I'm thinking, well, first of all, this might not even be true. Maybe I watched too much Star Trek. Maybe I've
sure.
interviewed too many people that have been abducted or contacted over the years, and maybe somehow my psyche has created this. So I was very doubtful, even with my experiences, until things really changed. Um, and what I loved about hers is that she does it in like a third party type of a way. So it's like when you're under, you're watching everything that happened to you like a movie. So you can recount it without having any emotional attachment to it. So you're not being like traumatized again if there was anything negative or bad that, you were trying to block out.
Sure.
But I actually got quite a bit of information, and as much as I was scared, I 100% am glad that I did it, because it did answer a lot of questions. It brought up way more than I had at the beginning, but I did get some.
I mean, I do think it's really, really interesting. There is a correlation with some people having abilities around these beings. So a lot of people that have psychic abilities, mediumship abilities that are heightened have had experiences before.
Yes, yes. And again, that's one of the reasons that I had originally, when I started this show, started off with, the name being Paranormal Connections. But it was so tough when I first came into radio to get people to really see it. It was so disconnected, and everybody's in their own field, and nobody thinks that anything has to do with the other. But it's like after you have so many years of having so many cases, and again, especially like with mine, we do both sides. We investigate both sides and research both sides. So we had members of MUFON on our team, and we had, paranormal investigators and psychics, and all different people on the other side. So when you start to do that, then on top of it, I'm interviewing all these people. You start to hear very similar stories.
Yeah, they are.
And and if it's somebody who's been contacted or all these things, you'll ask them if they've ever had anything kind of paranormal that's happened to them, and they'll be like, well, you know what, actually, yeah, so this and this and happened. If you ask somebody in the paranormal, have you ever seen, a UFO, a lot of them will say, oh, I have seen them a few times, and it's very interesting how some people, or how many more people at this point, are actually coming out, and we're actually seeing that it is much more connected, I think, than previously thought.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's weird. I've never seen a ship. I've never seen an actual UFO like my mom did, and her relatives have seen them in New York State. Yes,
Yeah.
I have not seen those. And usually, if I have visitors, it's usually mathematical equations that they show me, weather patterns. Um, I've even had experiences where one time it was I was talking to my doctor,
Hmm.
and my doctor said everything's going to be okay. But it was the oddest dream I've ever had on the planet. It actually hurt. It was cold, and I was in my early 20s, so it was stronger in my 20s
Right.
and in my 30s, and then it got less and less. And I've had just a few, I think, since I moved here to Indiana.
And that's interesting, because that is kind of a something that I hear repeated a lot too. Like, my seeing them started very young. It kind of progressed through my 20s into my 30s, and then I've had experiences that are very interesting, but um, one of the things that was really triggering me is that you also get information about the weather, things
Hmm.
like that, what's going to be happening.
Sure.
Now, when I first started having the precog dreams, I thought that's exactly what they were, was just dreams. And since I had psychic abilities, I felt like, okay, maybe these were my guides and this is how they gave me the information because I never knew anything different.
Hmm.
But then and then when I would come out of the precog dreams, I would always have sleep paralysis.
Hmm.
It was like a staple. Did you ever experience that after having dreams like that as well?
Sure. The dreams are, I would call it, I'm being called to bed. And before I had any of these experiences, I had an overwhelming feeling of needing to go to bed. It wasn't like, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to go to bed now. It was like, I got to go to bed now.
Right, right.
And the dreams felt very, very different. Anytime I do, I get information from dreams or dream work or anything like that, it is almost, I have to go to bed now or I'll miss it feeling. With those experiences, it was a definitely, I have to go to bed, and they felt completely different than normal dreams. Absolutely on that.
Yeah. It was just, and again, I've interviewed enough people in the paranormal, right, that had sleep paralysis all the time. And they think that it's because they interact with the spirit world and, the shadow people are coming to get them. Uh, but interesting enough, as I got older, when I would have come back from these precog dreams, I could sometimes see little beings that would be in my home, in my bedroom.
Sure.
And so again, I always thought that it was paranormal based or, it had something to do with my abilities and I was just getting that information. Um, then I found out that no, I was actually being given this information and not in the way that I thought or expected. So it kind of sent me in a complete circle again because it's like every time you figure that you got something figured out, it it just opens the door to more questions.
Sure.
Speaking of questions, let's see, we've got a few here. Greg says, have you ever revisited the location where this happened to you to see if there's any past experiences being recalled from being there? Maybe you have forgotten. A lot of times, when a victim of a crime or an assault can have memories triggered by revisiting a location they have been, are suppressed from trauma.
Yes, I've been to that area several times afterwards. It's where my grandparents were from. Is he meaning New York State? My first experience.
Yeah, yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. Yes.
Um. Yes, but I will tell you this. Every time I went back, I went looking for it.
Okay.
After that day, after that evening, as afraid as I was always a curious, obnoxious child. Always wanting
Yes,
to
I was.
understand. And I grabbed my little brother and I said, we're going to look for this gray thing. I don't know what it was. It looked like Salem's Lot to me. You know, that's what was going through my head. And I'm not going to lie, my mom exposed me to chariots of the gods, the whole 9 yards. And she did believe in aliens, but it wasn't like a strong point for me as a kid. As far as I was concerned, the puppet experience, they were puppets. But
Right.
it wasn't possible because it was on a second story floor and they were outside of my window. So they didn't scare me up until that point, whatever it was. They always came to me in puppet form because I am obsessed with puppets. I love Jim Henson. I love, as a kid, anything puppets I loved. Now, when I was 16 and saw that, so yes, I have returned several times and I am planning on going back to do a YouTube documentary called Looking for Gray.
Nice, nice. Tia says, yeah, going back to the precog dreams, yeah, most have these kinds of dreams, just like a lot of people know how to go astral. And yeah, but I think that the astral projecting is is even different from these precog dreams. It's not
Very.
this. It's not the same to me, at least in my opinion. What do you think, Dee?
With the few astral projection experiences I've had, and they were not done intentionally, it felt very different. Very
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
Amazing, but very different to me.
Yeah, well, I can definitely astral project, especially if like I'm really tired. I have insomnia really, really bad, so I don't ever or rarely, let me say not ever, I rarely go into a very deep sleep. So but when I do, yes, I astral project and it's amazing. But this is a completely different type of thing. Like I
Yeah, it feels
also
different.
don't wake up with sleep paralysis when I come back from astral projecting. I just kind of like feel like I'm slammed into my body real quick.
Yes, yeah,
All
definitely.
right. Jackie says you're both right. This is so true. It skipped a generation. Now my granddaughter has my abilities. I'm not happy. No, Jackie, I actually think that you should be happy. I think that, I've actually known Jackie for a long time. She's an investigator. She is also follows the ufology and all of that. I
Mhm.
think that it's absolutely amazing that she has a grandmother, just like my grandson is very gifted. And I can be very open with him because that was my biggest thing of growing up and not understanding anything that was going on. That
Right.
was what was so hard for me, which is also why I started mentoring kids with abilities because I felt like it's not only do you have to teach the kids, but you have to teach the parents how to
Mhm.
deal with the child that has abilities and experiences.
Yeah, if you don't have that supportive nurturing, it could go very badly for that
Yes,
child psychologically.
yes,
It is. I was so blessed. Not that my parents were perfect. Obviously, there were issues in my family, like everyone else. But my mom was so supportive of anything different that I didn't have to worry about my mom punishing me or telling me I was crazy. It was always supportive, and we could always sit down and talk about it, and I didn't have to worry about it.
I love that. Like again, that's amazing. Greg is saying, I've noticed from hearing a lot of abduction experiences, there seems to be a similar correlation along with the paranormal, as in spiritual attachment. How the paranormal entities and quote unquote aliens seem to follow the individual. The experiences may happen elsewhere, but seem to be the strongest at ground zero where the experiences originated from. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really interesting as when I was growing up, I would say when I go to certain places, I would feel whatever it was coming. Um, always in New York State, always in Ohio. Texas, when I lived in Texas, I had experience going from Austin to Corpus Christi in a deserty type area. That really frightened me. I couldn't tell you how I had to get out of that area. And the person I was with at the time knew I had these experiences, and he was skeptic, and he knew we had to get out of there before something happened. He goes, "You scare me. This always happens, and you always know something's coming." So I think there's something to be said to that. I am drawn to go back to New York State the past 5 years very strongly. Like I have a need to go back there at some point in the next couple years. So yes, I
Interesting.
do feel that. As far as like entities and things, seeing them, they're very always around. Um, I always hear and see and can sense them, but I don't. I also do block it quite a bit just so I can have a normal everyday life. And
Yeah,
I, by far, am not pursuing like a mediumship type of thing right now at all. It's just part of my life, and I can't change that.
yeah. It's definitely something, again, you just kind of have to adjust. And things that happened as a child, are now different as we're adults, and it seems to
Yeah.
be ever changing. So it's not like you just already know how everything's going to play out and when they're going to come, when they're not, what it is, what it's not. It can be very, very confusing. Robert says self-teaching can be hard, so mentoring can be a big help. Yeah, I
Absolutely.
definitely agree. It's one of the reasons I got into it, was just because it was just such hell on me growing up, that not only was I able to help the children, I was able to help their parents understand, and then I was able to network them with other children in their similar age groups that were
Right.
just like them. And this was back when people weren't really talking about this. So it was, and they, being a child, I know that I used to go to school, like I was very personable and like people loved me. But as soon as I got comfortable and I talked about anything that was going on in my life, those kids would go back and tell their parents, and they were like, forbidden to ever come near me again. So, I wanted the kids to be able to have a place where they could talk and have support and an understanding from their peers. So that was, I think, of, if I could say I accomplished anything throughout my career in the paranormal, I think that would be the highlight. Is that I really think I made a difference there.
Right.
Jackie says, "Yes, thank God she has me to talk to." Oh, absolutely, that is a blessing, and you've got a whole community around you that is right there to help you as well. Hey, Rhonda, nice to see you. Oh, Tia says that's beautiful. Yeah. So going forward, so when did you actually start, say, being really interested in the paranormal and taking it from just an interest to actually researching or trying to get answers?
Well, that I was a professional dancer for 30 years. It ate up my life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was a dancer and a performer, and I traveled and I taught and I worked, and um, stuff always happens. I, I mean, it was always there, but I just, like I said, since I was raised, it was an acceptance thing. It was like,
Right.
that's normal. It's okay. But when I retired from dance, I, I went through a lot of stuff. My mom died. I lost a friend that I danced with for 15 years in 2019 on the same week. Less than 6 months later, I lost my cat, my stepmom, all in less than a year. And I had thought about doing the podcast and doing more, getting more involved in metaphysics, spirituality, the paranormal, because I think they all intertwine, because we're
Right.
all looking for that one answer. And it's not about, although I have to say the TV shows has really helped us a lot, because it's brought it to the forefront. It's okay to talk about now, and
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
I,
And
I'd kind of say that it's kind of straddles the fence. It was a good thing that it brought it to the forefront and people finally like started hearing about it and had an interest, and it piqued the interest. It also created a community that is hell
oh,
bent on attacking each other. There is, forget all about unity. That's just a temporary thing till you realize it's not about that. And even more so, it was teaching new investigators that was like, oh, I'd be interested in doing something like that. Really bad habits. Like, they're
mm-hmm.
watching and they're going and they're provoking and they have no idea that they should be protecting or what they should be
Sure.
telling
Right.
the spirits they can't follow them home. So I mean, really, it was double edged because I was like, yeah, bring it to the forefront. And it's bad that, they're being taught all the wrong ways. But on the other hand, it kept me in all kinds of clients forever because all
Sure.
these new investigators then were bringing stuff to their houses and couldn't cleanse them. So they needed my help. So I'm like, well, keeps me working. She said so aggravating. Yeah,
And
it
that's why I
does.
started podcasting. it was to educate, to bring stuff out that people haven't heard of. I think it's important. I love the whole podcasting genre. I love being in my PJs and
Yes.
interviewing people on audio because it, it just is so comfortable.
Yes.
And it makes me
I-
accept myself because, when I tell people, yeah, I believe in aliens, I believe in abduction, I believe in Bigfoot, I believe this is part of nature. Like my mom always said, paranormal, that's just nature.
Right. What is very normal? I mean, it's normal to us. It's
Yeah.
abnormal to everybody else. I mean, many of us, this has just been our life, so we don't really.
Yeah.
It's not scary. I mean, at this age, there's really not anything I find that's really scary unless something like just appears like out of nowhere and like kind of
And
shocks
startles
me.
you.
Yeah, it startles me. But as far as like when I go investigating, and I've gone plenty of times or been at like conferences where they're doing the investigating and something happens and the guests like scatter, all these so-called badass investigators go scattering and run. If they're running from that area, that's exactly where I'm going because I want to know what it was so scary that you're running. So that's what
Right.
I'm looking for. It's very interesting. Now, for you, how was it coming out about believing in abductions, UFOs, things, Bigfoot? Because I really had a hard time. Like people were like, "Oh, you're in the paranormal," and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're probably just making this stuff up now because you're interviewing people on the other side." And it it was very people were very, I don't know, just not very accepting of this. And the fact that I could just say I believe in all of this was just so upsetting to so many people.
I talked about this with my very dearest and closest friends throughout my whole life. Um, I came out publicly when I started having podcasts because I was talking to so many people. It made me feel comfortable.
Right.
Um, I never hid it, and I just didn't care. I knew something happened, and I am a skeptic on many levels. I'm even a skeptic with myself.
Yeah. Oh, I
I
am too.
I really, really, really look at everything I do and everything I see, and always ask myself, okay, let's eliminate some things. Why did you feel that way? What's happening?
Right.
And when these experiences happen, they're completely different than any experience I've ever had. And, I've told people it has circulated around my reproduction years at its height. So, on a scientific level, I wonder what's really going on with all the news
Right.
reports, the trial, all of that stuff. You got to really take a step back. And I know people think it's funny and we shouldn't be worried about that. Maybe we should be worried about certain things.
That part.
If something can come and invade, can come into your room and you didn't say, "Hey, come on in."
Right.
I have a beef with that. I have like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna
Yeah.
visit me and if you need something, I'd rather you tell me. And I used to tell my mom that as a kid. I don't want to be scared of these things.
Yeah. And I think
You
that,
know?
yeah, I think that it's the thought of, again, being taken against your will, but then thinking more into it, are we really being taken? I mean, some people, yes, are absolutely taken, against their will, but some people, just because they don't remember being taken or being brought
Sure.
back, they assume that they were taken against their will. That's what I thought, and absolutely that was absolutely wrong. I had absolutely been doing this for a very, very long time. This had been happening. So that's why it was so natural to me and didn't scare me or anything. I didn't know any difference. I didn't know what was going on when I was getting these precog dreams. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. Let's see. Jackie says, I know we all have to experiencing everything ourselves. Well, I don't even think that. I think that there's a lot of people that have very similar experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that having a community, and for me, podcasting has been amazing because
Yeah.
I noticed in the paranormal field, it was very clicky, and it was like, oh, if the majority believed you, then you get some validation. If the majority of them don't, then they'll try to cancel you. Uh, with your radio audience, it took me a long time to build the audience, but once I did, the subjects I was talking about was drawing in like-minded people. So same thing on my social media. So it then
Mhm.
became very easy to talk about, and people found it very easy to contact and share their stories with me. And I'm sure you feel the same way when you get somebody who has been abducted or has had things like this go on, and they trust you enough to come on your show to discuss it. That's huge. I'd rather do that than speak at a million conferences.
Sure. I I love the whole podcasting thing, and I am, because I performed for so many years. I don't really like to go out very often unless it's with my family.
Right.
So when I go to investigations, I keep very quiet and to myself. I don't get involved in any of that because being a professional dancer for years, didn't like the clicky, and I didn't like the jealousy, and I didn't like any of those issues. I did it
Right.
for 3 years. So far I have been extremely, maybe because I don't get out much. I have been so blessed. I'm very supportive by my husband and my brother, my family. Um, I don't have any of those issues at all. I can say I know what happened. I know what I saw, and I'm still, even though I know what I saw, I'm still skeptical, because I have to be. And I have to be in a sense that until I know what it really is, then I can grow from it. And I wish the paranormal community would realize, if they're doing those things still, realize that we can't get answers and we can't grow. And we can't get the people we need in the scientific world to step in and help us if we're acting that way.
Yeah, it's like as quickly as the paranormal got onto the map, and it was like nobody was investigating, then everybody wanted to investigate.
Mm.
And people used to say, "Oh, don't you hate that?" And I'm like, "Absolutely not. That's got so many more like-minded people searching for answers. That's great. Let's get
Mm-hmm.
out there." We used to work with each other, and we used to, you know, uh, collaborate, and people used to all the time send me pictures, to say, what do you think, what are you getting off these pictures? None of that happens anymore. I sit and scroll through social media, which is why I'm not on as much as I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But I see people just, if you post a picture and you're a new investigator and you think you've captured something amazing, they will rip you apart. They will rip, it could be absolutely legit picture, and some of these people out here will rip you apart and say you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm a photo expert and this is what this is. And I just, it's just too much. It's just too much for me. And then the ufology side was exactly the same too. And then the cryptozoology was even worse because they don't believe in anything. So except for Bigfoot and the cryptozoology. So, it was, I think now, again, we're starting to see a little bit more mixing because we're starting again on television to see places like Skinwalker Ranch, different places like that,
Sure.
where
Yeah.
they have all kinds of activity. It's not just paranormal. It's not UFOs. It's not, they've got all kinds of stuff going on. So I think that, unfortunately, everybody's been working, so long and so hard to try to bring these fields and show that they're very connected. And then it pops on TV and it's just like people are sheep and they're like, oh, if it goes on TV, it must be real. So, okay, now we'll all believe, it's the same thing with the whole UFO, you know, um, conferences and disclosure. It's like we've been saying, "Oh yeah, Roswell was real. We've had craft. We have all this," and everybody's been saying, "Oh, you guys are conspiracy theorists," and "Oh, you're crazy that you believe any of that." And now it's like, "Oh yeah, okay, well maybe we didn't tell you all the truth. Maybe it is, the case." So it's like once it's goes on TV and, anybody admits anything, everybody's like, okay, like a light switch. Okay, we believe now.
Mhm. Yeah.
So very interesting.
Well, I was in a dance field that didn't explode until it had a huge show.
Yeah, there you go. And the dance community is very jealous as well, because it's a huge competition when you're trying to, like, land a part, in a dance or something. You got all this competition.
It can be, yeah. I also met some amazing women, but it was a hard lifestyle.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
It's exhausting.
Uh, Michael says that's the ugly sides of these groups. Huge egos. You have to stand your ground and trust yourself. I've never
Absolutely.
been a
Okay.
follower. I've always been kind of a rebel. So it's like I really don't care if you believe what I believe. I feel like everybody has the right to their own opinion. And I personally love interviewing people who don't believe in the same things I do. I love to pick their brains. I mean, I
Sure.
understand that unless somebody has their own personal experience, it's really beyond the scope of their mindset that they can fathom that something like this could even exist or happen to anybody. So I get it. It doesn't bother me whatsoever. I love skeptics. I love to take skeptics on investigations. Oh, that's hysterical. Um, yeah, but everybody has their own experience. So I if people don't believe in what I do, I've had haters the whole time. I had haters when I first got into the field. I have more haters when I got on the podcast. So, it's okay. It's completely okay. Not everybody has to like me or the topics or what I do, but it is what it is. It's who I am. And I really don't. When I say I really don't care about what other people say, boy, I really mean I really don't care. I'm glad you've had a good experience though, but I do think that getting into the podcast,
Mhm.
radio show era, and being able to start off with your experiences and all of that makes it so much easier because you've already got this audience, they're following you. Oh, true that. So you really don't have as many of the haters. You've already got kind of the people are already following you that are interested in your story. Um,
I
I
kept it quiet the first year of podcasting and just interviewed people. It came out more and more through guests poking at me. So I was like, hey, I'm coming clean. Yeah. I've had experiences.
Yeah,
And I think so many of the podcasters, so many people that I interview, their experiences are very amazing, but they mean something to their life. It's
right.
not just it. It's so much part of them, and that they've given up time and made a huge effort at writing books and changing their life and coming out to something that has a lot of ridicule. I mean,
Yeah,
I get laughed at all the time if I'm like, yeah, I believe in that. Of course, I believe in that. They're like, oh, come on. It's like, well, you believe in things you don't see. You believe
right.
you're guided in certain things. I mean, I grew up Catholic, became not Catholic, but grew up Catholic. And I have a respect. I have a respect for Christianity, definitely.
Oh, I do too. I do too.
Uh,
I've said this all the time. I mean, I'm just not somebody that just takes whatever is fed to them and told that this is how I've questioned everything since I was young. Like, anybody in my family would tell you I'd drive them crazy. I had to know I questioned everything. It was just my human nature. So I
and
definitely think,
if you think about it, the saints all had experiences. That's why they were saints.
right,
But
right.
they had experiences, and if you read about their experiences, it's interesting. There is a book. Um, I'll have to let me think about this book because I have it and I love it. It, gosh, let me think. It's in my bookcase. I should run and get it real quick.
Go
I
ahead.
really love this book. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Okay.
You could talk to Maggie.
No worries. Yeah, we've got a little co-host back there. I need a new book too, so I'll have to check it out. We'll have to see what it's about.
I'm hilarious. I interviewed him, and I really loved this book. And it made sense to me in its Deception of Gods and Men by Barry Fitzgerald and Brian App.
Oh, yes, I've had him on my show. Yes,
Yeah,
okay,
I love Barry. Barry's amazing.
yes, absolutely.
This book brought up an interesting subject that made me really think about things. You know, several of the Christian visions of the church and stuff like that, and how deceiving these entities and elements were. So it really made me stop to think, if that's in Christianity, then they either had abilities or alien experiences of some kind and have been deceived. So
Yeah,
if they can have those visions, see these things, everyone else can too.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. And
And that's why
again,
I
I
like
think
Bear's book.
the oak, yeah. So if you haven't got, yeah, definitely everybody go out and get it. Here's a shout out to Barry for sure.
Yeah, that book has really like, I read it and I just fell in love with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get it. I haven't read the book, but I've had Barry on before a long time ago, so I'll definitely want to check that out as well.
Put your
I was just
seatbelts on.
saying
It
I
will
need a
make you
good book.
question.
Yeah, like if I don't question everything already, yeah.
But
Well, we're at the end of the show, so I want to give you a chance to shout out your show, let people know
sure.
where they can find you, and make sure to go and check out D show weekly. I just actually checked it out just the other day and caught episode. You're a great host, so
Thanks.
doing right just what you should be.
Well, let's see. Of course, Twilight Tonic Paranormal Podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, um, and it's a lot of fun. Christine's going to be on next week,
Yep.
and I love audio, so I love to talk. And my guests are amazing on there. And then I love Todd Bates. He's one of my favorite people in this field. I do Twilight Tonight on Friday nights, WLTKDB, and I really love him a lot. And it's just
Shout
fun.
out to Todd.
Todd's great. Hi, Todd. Um, it's just something I love to do. So please, if anybody, and I'm looking for Halloween stories. I want to
Oh,
do a Twilight Tonic Paranormal Halloween. So if anybody's got any amazing stories, please, Instagram me at DeeDee Moonfly or Facebook me. X me, I guess it's called X now and not.
all right.
You reach me on SoundCloud too. So
We'll put a post out about that, and I'll share it on my pages as well, and on my in my groups, so people can know. But again, share this show again always to all your groups with all your friends. We love to have people live, but again, the are always there. You can always go back and see the replays. And stay tuned to my page. I will be letting everybody know when I will be on DeeDee's show and when they'll be out. When you could, one is pre-recorded, the other one is live. So once the pre-recorded one comes out, I'll share that with everybody. Make sure you share that for her as well. And then for the live show, I'll make sure to share the event page when that's coming. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining tonight. Again, make sure to share, 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 share. Love you. Make sure to check out Dee and go check out her show. You're absolutely going to love it. All right,
hi,
everybody.
Christine.
Love you
Thank you.
lots. Thank you so much. Good night,
Bye.
everybody. I'll see you next week.